is it true that this book was conceived over a boozy lunch
Yes.
in Mallorca?
I love that you know this.
Elizabeth Day, it is so lovely to have you in studio.
It's so lovely to be here. Thank you for having me. That pitch you gave for the book, I need to steal that.
Oh,
how
here,
you described
you can have it. You can have it.
It's one of the things I always struggle with is
Okay.
trying to describe the book that I've written.
Yeah.
So I'll steal it.
But it's brilliant because it does cover everything. It's like the family dynamics, it's shame, it's power, it's the upper English class.
Yes.
And we love, why do we love the antics of the rich and famous so much? It's like we cannot get enough of it.
It's so interesting, isn't it? And I'm exactly the same. I just love nothing more than watching or reading about rich people behaving badly.
Yes.
And I think we're in such a time for that right now because we're living through such painful times that we're looking for entertainment, but we're also grappling with how we got here. And part of the reason we got here is because we put our trust in elites
Yes.
to know what's best for us. And spoiler alert, a lot of the time they didn't and they don't.
Yes.
And so One of Us is really about why we fall in love with the people who damage us and why we sometimes elect them too. Why we sometimes have this belief that if someone's been to a posh public school and sailed into Oxbridge and then gone straight into a political career, they must know what's best.
Yeah.
Whereas in truth, they don't actually know what life is like for the ordinary man or woman in the street. So it's
Yes.
that kind of tension that I like to explore.
Oh, it's so good. And is it true that this book was conceived over a boozy lunch
Yes.
in Mallorca?
I love that you know this. Yes. So I was wondering what to write next, and I knew I was going to write a novel next. And my husband Justin and I went away for a long bank holiday weekend to Mallorca.
Nice.
But it was one of those early flights that gets in too early for the room to be ready at the hotel.
Oh,
so
yes, love those flights. Love those flights. There's only one thing to do.
Exactly. And so we decided to have lunch in the hotel restaurant. We got ordered a paella and we ordered a couple of bottles of Whispering Angel. Other rosés are available, but in my opinion, Whispering Angel is the best. And it was during this lunch that Justin said, "Oh, what are you going to write next?" And I was just talking about it, and we were talking about a previous book I wrote called The Party.
Yeah.
Which is a companion piece to One of Us. You don't have to have read it,
Yeah.
but if you do read it or if you have read it, then you'll get a lot of satisfaction knowing what happens to the characters. And The Party was published in 2017, and it was also a kind of political satire about rich people behaving badly.
Yeah.
But so much had happened since 2017.
Yes.
That we'd had the rise of Trump, the pandemic, the election of Boris Johnson in the UK, like all of this stuff, Brexit.
Yeah.
We were grappling with the aftermath, and I thought, actually, I'd be so interested to see what my characters are up to now, given
Yes.
that differing political context. Also, my life personally had changed massively. I'd got married and I'd launched a podcast, and it had given me this whole other insight into the dynamics of success.
Yes.
And so all of that went into One of Us. And I know that you've read it, so you will know that there's a whole bit about podcasts.
Yes.
And reality TV, which is another obsession of mine, and how we often...
Because you're a Real Housewives girl.
Oh, yes. I'm a Real Housewives professor, Kathryn.
Well, I didn't know there was such a thing. I love that there is.
I've invented it.
I love that there is.
But I love reality TV, obviously because it's fabulous and camp and entertaining.
Yeah.
But also I do think genuinely it's a cultural force of our age. And so many failed politicians have used reality TV as a means to rehabilitate themselves.
Yeah.
And so I also wanted to look at that. And I invented this failed Tory MP called Richard Take, who is a hilarious character because he's got no self-awareness at the start of the book.
Funny. It's so funny.
And he goes on reality TV as a way of familiarising himself with the public.
Can we say the name of the TV show? Shit Happens?
I'm looking at producer Ema and she said yes.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
But it's so smart. It's just,
Thank
it's
you.
so good. And I think, and even when I think about, rich people behaving badly, we've got to give a little nod to Jilly Cooper as well.
Yes.
Who passed away. Did you have her on the pod?
I did.
You did?
I did. I was so lucky I got to meet Dame Jilly, and she came on the pod, I think, earlier this year.
Yeah.
And I think, like so many female authors, she was so underrated for so long.
Yeah.
And dismissed as someone who wrote bonkbusters.
Yeah.
In the way that many women are dismissed as writers of domestic sagas, whereas men get to be called state of the nation
Oh,
novelists.
gosh.
And actually, I'm so glad that Dame Jilly got her due before she died in seeing the adaptation of Rivals on screen and how popular that's been. And now we understand that she was such an incredible and acute observer of class.
Yes.
And also of a kind of British sensibility and silliness, which is very joyful sometimes to write about and to read about. So I absolutely adore her. And I remember hoovering up all of her books when I was a teenager.
She was so ahead of her time, I think, as well. And even and very smart when you heard her being interviewed as well. And what I loved about her is hearing stories. Anytime she came here to do interviews, she'd always write a letter to people afterwards.
Yes.
Because I know you got one, Emer, and remembered everybody's name and had the spelling all right. I mean, just beautiful. A class act. So back to your boozy lunch in Mallorca.
Sorry,
this is where the book all took off and it happened. And is it true that you write, anytime you open your laptop, you say, right, it's 1,000 words or it ain't happening?
Exactly.
Okay, I love this.
Because I have always had other full-time jobs when I write books, I have had to fit it in around those obligations. And so it wouldn't work for me I'm not a morning person anyway. So the idea of getting up at 4 a.m., having my matcha green latte and doing a quick biceps workout and then sitting down to write for 6 hours, it's just not going to happen for me. So I very early came up with this idea that every time I opened my laptop, I had to write 1,000 words, and that was my deal with myself. It didn't matter if I thought those 1,000 words were execrable and horrendous and I was the worst writer ever to commit any word to paper. I just had to get through it and I had to get them on the page, because the great joy of writing a book as opposed to writing a newspaper article, which I used to do, is that you get to go back and edit the next time.
Yes.
And as long as I had those 1,000 words, you can't write a book unless you've got the words on the page. And that's often a key piece of advice that I give to people who want to write. There's so much talk about the art of it. And obviously that's a huge and important part and motivation. But there's not enough talk about the craft of it, which is literally, if you want to build a cathedral, you have to start with a brick and a wall and just doing it one by one. And so words are like bricks for me. And I aspire to the cathedral, but I often end up with just a very nice barn.
But I do love that, because it can be a stumbling block for so many people in that creative space. And I know you've written or you've got a podcast now called How to Write a Book, another one called How to Date.
Yes.
With Mel Shilling.
Yes.
And
have you had Mel Shilling on?
No.
You have to get her.
Hook
She's brilliant.
Me up,
okay,
Elizabeth.
I will.
Hook me up.
You two would love each other.
But I mean, as I said, I've been a huge fan of the podcast, and we have to talk about the pod.
Yes.
It's so good. It's been going since 2018. And it is just growing and growing. 32 million downloads, 400
I'm going to shock
episodes.
you now, because it's 65 million down.
Stop it. Stop it.
I know.
65 million.
It's completely mad. And actually, I often get told, you shouldn't really reveal your download figures. But I was like, I'm so excited.
Absolutely do that.
I thought 12 people would listen and 2 of them would be my parents. That's what I thought when I started it.
So, podcasts back in the day, I mean, I've just started mine, but back in 2018, they were kind of having a moment. But where were you in your life at that time when you started? And where did it come from? Where did the idea come from of the how to fail?
So it came from feeling like a failure in my own life. And whilst I understand that someone listening to this might think, well, what's she got to feel like a failure about? Because on paper, my career was going pretty well. I had a staff feature writer job.
Was that with The Observer?
That was with The Observer.
Yeah.
I'd written 3 books. But personally speaking, I felt really disconnected from myself. And really disconnected from the outside version of myself that other people might see. And that was partly because I'd gone through a number of real challenges. So I'd got married to the wrong person, I'd got divorced, I'd tried and failed to have babies, I'd had unsuccessful IVF, the first of 3 miscarriages. And then I got into a new relationship that lasted for 2 years. And that relationship ended totally out of the blue for me, just before I turned 39. And this all happened in a period of sort of 5 years. And then I felt like I was staring down the barrel of my 40s, not having any of the things that I thought I had yearned for: a family life, a husband that I loved. And that's really the starting point. And in the midst of that breakup, I couldn't listen to any music because it made me feel too sad. You know, you get that vision of yourself in an indie movie. that you're just staring disconsolately outside of a bus window. So I started listening to podcasts. And I listened to Serial, which was really like the OG of all podcasts.
Yeah.
I listened to that when it came out, but then I hadn't listened to any others. And because I just got an iPhone and it just got easier to understand how to listen, I started listening to one in particular, Esther Perel's Where Should We Begin?
Yeah.
Which, if you've listened to it, you will know it's this space for extraordinary, intimate conversations about relationships. And it helped me a lot to get over my breakup. And those things all came together. The feeling of failure, the realization that podcasting could be a space for intimate conversation, and, to be honest, my own frustration with print journalism and the kind of interviews I was routinely doing for newspapers, which were all about success and only ever had a very limited word count. And I felt that I could never really get under the bonnet of who someone was.
Yes, yeah.
Because the right stories cannot exist unless you have the right people telling them. And in podcasting, which started out for me as such a meritocratic space and such a welcoming community, a couple of years ago I looked at the top of the charts and it was, honestly, it was like 9 out of 10 of the top 10 podcasts were fronted by white middle-aged men talking to each other about each other. And I was like, why is this happening? And very often I was the top performing solo female podcaster, but it was incredibly difficult to crack that top 10. And so I launched a production company called Daylight, which is specifically devoted to elevating female and diverse voices. So How to Write a Book, which you were kind enough to mention, is fronted by 3 black women who are incredible experts in their field, a publisher, an author, and an agent. How to Date, as you mentioned, was fronted by Mel Schilling and me. And so I'm very passionate about showing that it can be done, because unless you show that it can be done, people don't believe that it can be, and they don't believe that they can do it.